I'm Jesse. I'm so excited to be here with my friend and collaborator, Maritza. Thanks for Media Impact Funders for having us. We're here to talk about local journalism in the context of civic health, specifically a tool that my organization created in the last year called the Civic Information Index. It uses publicly available data to map drivers of engaged, informed, equitable, and healthy communities nationwide. It's seeking to consider journalism in the context of the bigger civic health puzzle that every community has. Let me reverse here. So I started the Listening Post Collective 12 years ago. And essentially, we're part of a bigger organization called Internews. You heard from my boss and colleague, Jeannie, earlier. Internews has worked in over 100 countries over the past 40 years. And the general concept with the Listening Post Collective and Internews is to look at information access for communities and supporting local media. In the Internews context, that's everywhere from Venezuela to Myanmar. And for me, that's everywhere from tribal communities to Appalachia. But we're doing very similar things and working together on our strategies. I think the main word with my work is collaborate. We're collaborating with communities to build better information ecosystems. We help them map what the community's information needs are, and then we help them, we support their solutions to those things. And one of the best examples I can think of for that is the work that Maritza's been doing. We've been collaborating since my birthday, March 20th, 2020, when you called me and I bought you a cell phone.
You did. Buenas tardes. Hi, how are you? Maritza, Félix, Latina, Mexicana, Migrante. Those three words are huge part of my identity and the work that we do in Conecta Arizona, that we just turned 5, so we're no longer a baby. So if you don't know about our work, Conecta Arizona is a news-you-can-use platform that connects transborder communities using WhatsApp, fact-check information, and a very good sense of humor. Part of our mission is to bring back joy to journalism, to bring back dialogue to journalism as well, and we have been doing it for the past 5 years. At the beginning, maybe you know the story, but March 2020, if you can barely remember those days, remember? My mom stayed on the Mexican side of the border. I stay on the US side of the border. And then, boom, border restrictions, pandemic. There was a lot of things going on. And my mom, who's a real queen of WhatsApp, used to send me text messages every single morning. All the glitter, all the quotes of the days, all the prayers that you can think of, and all the misinformation that you can think of. It's like, mijita, yeah, baking soda, lemon, and hot water, and you're gonna be fine. It's like, Mom, I don't know if I put some Vicks on my feet, it's gonna work against coronavirus, but let me fact check it for you. So I started doing a lot of fact checking just for her, and then my aunts, and then my in-laws, and that very, very small WhatsApp group that started with 12 people now reach more than 100,000 in different products and platforms across the border. Everything that we do, yeah, let's celebrate. Everything that we do is in Spanish, and we do journalism con acento y con talento because most of my community in Arizona, they look like me, they speak like me. We have this Sofia Vergara sexy accent. But we still like to consume news and information in Spanish. And I'm really proud of the things that we have built, and especially in this moment. I'm here with you talking about the amazing work that we have been doing in the border, while my team right now is covering too many raids in Arizona. More than 5 raids are being going on. And what you saw during this weekend in Los Angeles, it was something that we saw in January in Arizona. Our team was tear gas, pepper spray. Every day we wake up and we see threats. Every day that we wake up, we see sometimes messages saying it's like, oh, you fucking Mexicans, go back to your country. And we are not trying to normalize. So I want to acknowledge that what we're living right now is the same reality that we're living in local communities is being replicated every single place in the United States.
I think we were talking earlier about what Maria Reza referred to this morning as the destruction's already happened. I think for a lot of communities in the US, that's been true for a really long time. And while we focus on what we're seeing today in Los Angeles or Phoenix. That's what Maritza's always working on, is making sure those communities that you're watching are informed. And from my side, it's something my organization has experienced and worked on all over the world. Free press, First Amendment issues, that's not a new thing, that those are attacked in lots of countries around the world. So while it feels kind of present and unique right now, I think the work we do is meant to always be preparing for those moments, because they're always around the corner.
Yeah, because this is my community. It's not just a story, and that's something that we want to cover our communities with dignity and respect, because it's not us versus them. It's always been us.
So we're going to take you to a location that Maritza knows well. You might recognize the young 5-year-old there.
Yeah, maybe.
By her posture. That's you and your mom, right?
That's my mom. So we live so close to the border that I remember that I was being born. Well, I don't remember, but I was born. I got my birth certificate, and before getting baptized, my mom went and got my visa for me to be able to go back and forth the border. So my mom still drives like an hour to Nogales to buy milk and ham because she likes it, and then goes back and have tortillas. And I celebrated my birthday in McDonald's and then the piñata in Mexico. So the border for me has always been my home, my inspiration, my backyard. And now that I live in Phoenix, that is like a 3-hour drive from the border, I realize that I'm always passing through those places that were so important for me as a child, and not staying over there and realizing that those places have become like a news desert. That we, the Listening Post Collective and Conecta Arizona, we see it as news gardens, because we can plant the seeds and see them flourish against everything like we do in the desert. For me, this is personal. Santa Cruz County needs more Spanish-speaking news and information. And it is important because that's the place where I buy my first pair of high heels, my wedding dress, when I still have a lot of friends, people who go back and forward, crosses the border every day. And I saw since 2020, when the pandemic hit, how that community went downsides or downhill, ¿cómo se dice?
Downhill.
Yeah? And it needs the support and the strength of information and news.
So 30 years later,
yeah.
Maritza has a news outlet, and she's interested in expanding from Maricopa County, which is the Phoenix area, closer to the border, and understands that the information needs on the border are unique and slightly different, and that necessitates data and research and understanding in order to serve that community better. One thing, when we look at news about Santa Cruz County, what do we see? It's often negative. It's often negative about immigrant communities.
Yeah, and drug dealers. And I usually do this exercise when I'm talking about the border. If you close your eyes and you think the first thing that it comes to your mind when I say the word border, depending where I'm standing, they will say, tunnels, drug dealer, the wall, drugs, guns. But for me, as I told you, it's burritos, it's my wedding dress, it's those tournaments of football that it goes back and forward. People who are crossing the border just to buy groceries or shopping. And that's what is so important, because for so long we have been trying to land the national narrative in our local communities when it's time to amplify the local efforts to the national narrative. We need to do it differently. Local means something, it's important. That's how we strengthen democracy. And if we didn't get the message last year, maybe this year we're actually gonna find out how important that is.
So we're gonna jump now to the actual index I wanted to talk about and how it's impacting Maritza's work. Basically, my organization wanted to get away from this obsession with news deserts and how many news outlets does a community have, because in reality, that doesn't measure whether people have the information they need or not. If it's not in a language people speak, if it's not accessible on a platform that people are using, then you're making a real assumption that because there's a newspaper, because there's a TV station, everybody's informed, because there's a digital news outlet. We need to expand what we're looking at when we try and measure, are people informed, do they have access to the information they need? So partnering with the Information Futures Lab at Brown University, we started collecting data, mostly from the federal government, but also from universities and some other efforts around the country, obviously including the census, and with support from Press Forward and the Democracy Fund, we started creating what we call the Civic Information Index, and it looks at 21 county-level data sets for every county in the country, and it looks at a very broad understanding of what are the indicators we can look at that tells us how civically healthy is a community, including what kind of journalism efforts exist in a place. So if you look at this map here, you know, the shades and colors, Appalachia is circled here in red. The shades and colors reflect kind of a high civic health. So the darker blue are areas that score higher on our index, and the lighter the green color gets, the less civic healthy places are based on the available data. There's data that we would love to have that doesn't exist or hasn't been collected. How are we using this at my organization? We're using it to determine where to work, where to help people create what Maritza's created. So we're focused on the border, we're focused on Appalachia, we're focused on the Black Belt, we're focused on tribal communities, and we're focused in rural communities. And we're using this index to help us decide how to engage people, how to collaborate, and how to invest in new ideas and some existing ideas. And again, the idea is journalism doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in partnership with libraries, public health clinics, local governments, all sorts of things help push journalism along and reach people. So we need to think about all of those places in order to make journalism work too. We created 4 categories where all of these data sets fit. So again, one is news and information. Because of a lack of a better option, we do include the data from the news desert map that a lot of you are familiar with. But that's a map that probably doesn't include Maritza. It doesn't include, I've given grants to WhatsApp groups. I've given grants to libraries. That wouldn't turn up on a news desert map. So we try and take a broader definition of who is actually informing a community. We look at civic participation. That includes local giving, philanthropic giving. It includes all the different ways that people get involved in their communities. We look at equity and justice. We look at health and opportunity. And we built this index with the help of an advisory group that was really unique. It includes data scientists, academics, journalists, and they helped us come up with these categories and also helped us find the data that we're using. The index came out last November. And these are the people using it so far. The University of Oregon teaches a class every spring where undergrads actually go out and map a rural part of Oregon and partner with the community on looking at community information needs. They've started using our index. And I was told by Andrew, the professor, that students really liked having access to something that gave them a deeper understanding of a community before they went and partnered with it. Beyond kind of what media existed already. Journalism support organizations, media outlets like Maritza, civil society actors, and funders are using it to look at parts of the country where they might want to invest. It helps them get to know a community a little more in depth. So this is Santa Cruz County. If you go to our index, this is what you'll see. So when I look at this with Maritza, what do I see? I see audience. So what's one of the main data points here that struck you when we looked at the index together?
Well, we as journalists, we think that we know better. So we run on assumptions. We tend to think that we know what the community needs. And when we sit down and we actually do the research and listen, sometimes what we think the community needs is not exactly what they actually need. Something that we have realized, and is very obvious if you live in Santa Cruz County, is there is no Spanish-speaking news organization that is already serving them. So there's a couple of them that sometimes they do translations once a month, but they don't actually reach those communities. And when they cover that, sometimes they only do it from the immigration point of view, and it's like, well, these people are already here, maybe they don't need this immigration because they're living immigration every single day. Something that we realized is that we we need to do a better job reaching those Spanish-speaking, because 80% of that population of Santa Cruz County speaks Spanish, and they consume news and information in Spanish. They wanna know more about how to get the economy back on track after the pandemic, because the unemployment rate is extremely high. They don't have health insurance because they're so close to the border. They'd rather cross the border, go to the dentist, and then come back if they have the privilege to do so. So there are so many assumptions that at the beginning when I was looking at this index, it's like, well, that might be obvious for me, but it's not for too many people who hasn't taken the time to listen to those communities. And I think Santa Cruz County is so beautiful, it is so vibrant, and we don't get to have the same opportunities of exposure as everybody else's.
Some of the other things to look at here, the colored side is actually Santa Cruz County compared to all the other counties in the country. And the left-hand side is the raw data, where the actual number from the data collection at the federal level. So again, it has more than 2 news outlets, but 80% of the county likely goes home and speaks Spanish. Do those news outlets publish in Spanish? One of the oldest news outlets in Santa Cruz County is the Nogales International. They publish 1 article in Spanish a month. It's a great news outlet, but they're not serving a predominantly Spanish language community. Literacy is a real issue. So again, if you're publishing a digital website or print, you're not serving the community based on available data that you can look at and try and craft something that really reflects the community back to itself. One data point here that we find really interesting in communities is medical debt, because it's often a determinant for people's long-term economic health and socioeconomic situation. And one good example, I think, of the possibility of this, of actually measuring the impact of journalism over time if we keep this index going, is the news outlet, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with MLK 50, in 2019 published a series on medical debt, and specifically a nonprofit hospital in Memphis that was putting a lot of lower income black families into debt. They had their own collection agency at that hospital. Within a month of publishing those stories, that hospital had relieved $12 million, I think, worth of debt. And so you would see in Shelby County, Tennessee, you would see that data line shift in a few years because of that reporting. And I think the bigger bet with this tool is, over time, can we keep collecting data? Can we localize the data even more so we're getting even granular at the neighborhood level? And really see if people have better access to information, better access to journalism, if the topics that they really need to understand are being covered, will we start to see civic health improve in some communities around the US? So yeah, this is the beginning. We want to build on this. We map information needs in communities around the country, and that's becoming more of a popular thing to do. One of the things we're looking at is how can we collaborate with all the people doing that work and visualize that data in a space like this so we can all see what's being learned around the country as we make that effort. That's one idea that we're working on with some peers. But again, I think it's always been challenging to calculate the impact of journalism beyond the anecdotal. And we're really trying to keep an eye here on, over time, over the next 5 years, 10 years, could we actually see a shift in civic health because we're thinking more deeply, like Maritza's doing, about how to serve Santa Cruz County in unique ways that are tailored to that place, that understand that place, that care about that place.
And I think this Civic Index is an inspiration for us just to see where we can start digging a little bit more and asking more questions, and then to understand the community that we're serving. Because some of them, they rather to consume a podcast, some of them, they rather to do a WhatsApp, or they're on TikTok. All day long we have been seeing how TikTok is so important to spread good and bad information within our communities. And I think that's something that we as journalists, we need to understand. But the listening is not just part of our reporter's job. We need commitment from the leadership as well. So small projects like Conecta Arizona, when we are just like less than 10 people full-time working in this community, is really easy. But if we want to implement change, we need to collaborate. We need to get others excited with the idea of the listening, of the data, of actually asking questions that are going to be relevant for our work, and be very comfortable with the awkward silences that our communities sometimes have, and be very comfortable with those responses that doesn't align with the things that we believe as journalists that our community needs. And sometimes it can be very sexy for us, and sometimes it can be very boring, but we need to actually sit down and have coffee with our community and understand, and then create the commitment that not just show up to do a listening tour and then just forget about them. It's actually this commitment, a two-way communication, and not being extractive. Something that we learned in 2024 that we got a grant for elections is we went to all those rural communities and we understand them. And something that we still need to do is follow up with them, because even though the grant is done, the work and the commitment that we have with them is not. We show up, we start opening those doors for communications, we need to actually follow through them. And Santa Cruz County is one of those rural communities that we need to do a better job. We owe them.
One last note I just wanted to share is, as we're watching the current administration do a lot of different things, but one of the things they're doing is they're shrinking government, and they're cutting things like data collection with science, with other education department, spaces like that. There's a moment here where we really should be thinking about, how do we collect data? How does that data get collected? Is it in safe hands? Will it continue to get collected? Because it really can inform us to make good decisions and good investments. And so again, we're thinking about this index as an opportunity to really kind of mobilize people in our peer space to collect data, to protect it, to put it somewhere that's publicly accessible, so we don't wind up not understanding what's actually happening around this country. In a few years, with certain departments stopping their data collection, we might not have a very good idea of how certain communities are doing. So things like this are going to be even more important as we move forward. And I think if collectively, it's the kind of effort that we could be really good at.
And then to have this multidisciplinary approach of how to bridge that gap between news and information. So something that we have learned in Conecta Arizona is when you talk about journalism, maybe community feel like a disengagement with that world. If you are providing access to information, that will be easy for them to see themselves reflected in the coverage that you do and to participate and build something with you. I think the multidisciplinary approach to the index, to the work that we do every single day, to creating a better ecosystem of information, not just news, at least for me in Arizona, in the border region, for us to reclaim the narrative of my border that is actually my home, it is very important. And I know that I'm doing it with a lot of passion because that's who I am, and with a lot of resilience because that's what immigrants community do. Resilience is a very beautiful and a very hard world because it means all the power that we have as a community, but at the same time, all the threats that we have to face to do this job. But I do believe that having access to information shouldn't be a privilege. It should be something that we all can have access to.
Thanks, Maritza.